Okay, One Piece chapter 1134 blind reaction. My immediate knee-jerk question is, what in the hell is Shanks doing here? Like, I know a while back, like, I was expecting Shanks to be here on the island, just based on some stuff we saw. And like when Luffy was speaking to Loki, he brought up the fact like, hey, Shanks. But it looks like Shanks is involved into some shady shit right now. Like, just because of what's going on, like you got those symbols and everything, and he's got his face covered, and there's like a cloak and whatnot. Like, very curious to see where Oda's going with this, but I do want to say this. The true highlight of this chapter is just when you think that Nico Robin's people could not be even more important than they are, Oda manages to give us a very heartwarming scene where we see the entire library with all those books that were thought to be lost to history, all the research that they did, that they compiled. It's all in that library. And it's very poetic when you look at what Oda did here, because the lost knowledge of Ohara and now what you had with Egghead, all that's about to be in one giant place now. No pun intended, because Vegapunk does say that she wants to rebuild the laboratory here on this island. And it's kind of fitting. And I do like where Oda's taking this, because it does show that when it comes to the pursuit of knowledge, when it's something that's done pure, you never truly can stamp it out. Eventually, that information is going to find itself in the hands of a new generation. And speaking of new generations, I do like the theme of how Usopp came here and he was expecting all these great warriors and etc. because of his experiences with Dory and Brogy. I like how when they meet the children, Usopp doesn't necessarily get disappointed, but he is told like, yeah, when it comes to how the giants used to be, that's not what we're aiming for here with this new generation. They're teaching them basically diplomacy. They're opening their minds up to trading with other people. They're opening their minds up to make them more informed. And it does make sense from that perspective, just given that by being a giant, they're already super strong. So it just makes sense that you don't necessarily have to refine their body so much as the mind, because when you strengthen the mind, the body will eventually fall into place in time, especially when you are that far ahead. So I did like what Oda did here. Now, I do want to back up and go over some of the recap portions, because I did like how when we open up, we have Luffy and he's thanking Saul for everything he did for Robin when Robin was a small child. And that's a really great leadership moment for Luffy. And that is something that I will say, as you read One Piece or you watch the anime, it's one of those things like you see Luffy really grow into that leadership role and just really embrace it, even when he isn't actively trying to do it. And this is just one of those moments. So this is Luffy being Luffy. And so I did like seeing this, because even though Saul was taking care of Nico Robin well before Luffy ever met her, this is just one of those times where Luffy has to pay that forward, because had Saul never looked out for Nico Robin, the Nico Robin who is assisting Luffy right now would not be a thing. And just for morality and morale purposes in general, you kind of have to just thank the guy, because Robin's there and he's a very important person to Robin. So I did like that. I like that a lot. Now, the other thing here is I like how Oda kind of circles back, because Saul, upon seeing Luffy thanking Saul and etc., Saul looks over to Nico Robin and says, I guess you found them after all. And when Robin says, yes, I found true friends who will stand up to protect me, and you see the Straw Hats outside of Luffy all shedding the ugly tears, etc. On one hand, it was comical to see that, Jinbe as well. But while it was comical to see that, I did like how that just kind of circles back, and it just makes you go back to what happened in Water 7 and Enies Lobby, and think back to how Robin at one point had lost the will to live. And now when you look at it now, it just kind of makes you view Nico Robin's character, and you already knew that she had a home with the Straw Hats, but seeing her old home, her old life, and her new life with Luffy, everything come full circle in this way, very beautiful writing here. Like, that's one of the joys of long-term storytelling and just long-term shonen in general. And that's something that I am going to miss whenever One Piece does end, whether that be 5 years from now or God forbid it be 10 years. I guess I shouldn't say God forbid, but it's one of those things like now series, they're ending quickly. And I call it like the Demon Slayer effect where they're ending in about 200 chapters. And that's still a long time. Like that's still a series that ran for like 4 years. But it's one of those things like moments like this, you don't necessarily get them in a story like that. When a series that has gone this long, there's just so much that you can build on and just compound all those small moments and interactions that the characters have. It just makes the payoff for scenes like this so rewarding. This is, as I get closer to caught up, this is just one of the things where I just truly, I love One Piece. I've said it before, but when I read One Piece, it takes me back to being a child at times. And there are not many series that do that. And so I did like seeing that part. And then I did like how, speaking of kids, after Vegapunk introduces herself and Saul's like, man, wait a second, like, why are you a woman? And Vegapunk's like, dude, I can explain that later. But here's the thing, like, I have another Vegapunk clone. I'm going to rebuild the lab here on this island. She explains how she did it, that she snuck out the version of Vegapunk that came to this island 20 years ago. She snuck him out and she's going to rebuild the laboratory. And we get another heartwarming moment where Bonnie, who is in her child form, and she goes up to Vegapunk and she's like, that means you can fix my father. And I like how she doesn't even hesitate to say yes. And the reason why I like that is after everything that Kuma and Bonnie have been through, I do feel like they've got a happy ending now, but that's the ultimate happy ending. Like, if you could find a way to fully restore Kuma's humanity, but keep everything that makes Kuma Kuma, best situation there. I like that. I really like that right there. And part of the reason for it is it kind of sets up the moment where you can kind of tell the message or give the theme, if you will, that this is one of those situations where Bonnie, having that adult form, she kind of had to grow up without truly getting to be a child. And now that her father's back, she gets a chance to act her age and be a child and naturally grow up. I like that. If that's the direction Oda's going, I really like that. And we get the introduction to Oda's assistant. And this should have been my first instance where I'm like, okay, there's got to be like a smoking hot woman somewhere around here, because Ange is the assistant of Saul. And, she kind of got like the Kokoro thing going on where like we probably get like the flashback and she was probably super bad back in the day, but right now, not so much. And what we see here is we learn that there was a bunch of children on this portion of the island, and it's because this is a school. This is where they learn. And Luffy and Usopp, they get super excited. They want to go exploring. Makes sense. Usopp is super excited because he's expecting to see all these different warriors. And even when he's told that this is a school for learning, he's like, so it is a warrior training ground, basically. And I get what Oda's going for there. But what I like here is the rest of Straw Hats seem very interested too, because it's not just Saul who's going to get the opportunity to show Nico Robin the library, but Chopper wants to go to the library too. And even Nami's like, let's go, because I haven't been in a school in ages. And it's kind of nice to just see more, especially with the East Blue Saga Straw Hats, just to see more with those characters kind of together. And I like the direction that that's gone. Now, the other thing here is when they meet the children, I like how Luffy's like, they're such wimps. And even Zoro's like, should I cut them down? Then when Usopp gets on to him, Zoro's like, well, I guess kids should be brats. And it kind of makes me just laugh for a second, because when you think about it, it does make sense that the giant children are as big as they are. But even with Luffy, it's like, imagine how Luffy would have reacted if this would have been Luffy meeting these same kids when Luffy was like 16 or 17 at the start of One Piece. Like, this is one of those times where I kind of wish we could just do a alternate universe and just drop that version of Luffy here, because I think the interactions will be golden. Now, the other thing too is as they are moving around, at first I'm going, they're standing on some weird shaped hill. And then the kids are going, wait, that's dangerous what you're doing. And then you turn the page and you get Ripley, the biology teacher, which, Oda, dog, get the fuck out of here. I'm just going to say that. Because when Zoro's like, whose voice is that? That's what got me. And sure enough, Ripley is a whole baddie. Total crazy looking body in a good way. Like hips, legs, everything, breasts. But it's like, dog, Oda, like, this is some straight gooner shit. I'm not mad at it, right? Like, I'm not mad at it. Like, with One Piece, you're going to get some fan service sprinkled in. It's gonna happen. You know, but like, what I like here is that Oda, he doesn't necessarily, like, imagine Sanji saw that, though. Like, ooh, Sanji would perv out. But what I like is that Ripley is explaining, like, insults, violence, pillaging, war, we're not in that type of world anymore. And I did like that distinction. I thought that that was very well done. And it just further shows the contrast, which is all the more reason why I'm like, there's got to be something very fucked up that is coming. Like, the fact that we're getting this much and we see that things look like they're this peaceful and they're talking about the old King Harold, it's one of those things like, there's something coming. Like, Loki's going to fuck something up. And it's going to be because of Luffy. And I really want to see how Luffy is able to usher in Loki and what Loki does. Because this is going to be interesting to see those interactions when people realize that Luffy did something like that. And what I also like is that Ripley is like, you know, I really want to see your white hair form. And the reason why I like that is that she talks about how even in Elbaph mythology, there was something about a certain white-haired warrior, but that also builds off what Saul said, where he's like, you know, I know all about the four emperors and it's a great distinction, etc. And you're just seeing acknowledgement from Luffy on multiple fronts here in this chapter. And that is something I like. And the reason why I like it is it goes back to Nico Robin, because she is truly protected. She is truly protected being with Luffy. And to just think of what that child version Nico Robin had to go through just to get to this point, to get to the point where she's under the shelter of Luffy, it makes all those moments of going from house to house, bed to bed, organization to organization. It's a delayed payoff and it's earned. Now, the other thing is, I did like how when Saul takes Nico Robin and Chopper into the library, we learned that if you take any books into the library, it just makes the books giant size. And we see Nico Robin with the tears in her eyes, and she's able to see all the books that were collected from 22 years ago. I like that because it's something that you can look at for her, and this goes back to the child part. You can look at it for her, and it takes her back to her childhood. Because if you look at that flashback where she's with Professor Clover, you see how small she is and how big those books look to a young 8, 6, 7, 8-year-old Nico Robin. Now look at her as an adult now on her knees, looking up at all those books. It's almost like she's a child again. That is beautiful imagery when you connect dots like that. Like, that's why I tell people, right? Like, One Piece is one of those stories, because of how long it is, there are people that are hesitant to like, can I just start like at Wano and go? It's like, no, you got to start from the beginning. It won't hit the same. But that's why I tell people, don't be turned off by the size of One Piece. And it's crazy because I'm not caught up, but don't be turned off by the size of One Piece. Take your time with it. Go at your own speed. And the reason why is moments like this, Oda, he just has reoccurring moments of brilliance. And this is one of those times. Like, this is not something that when you read the story, you consciously look for, but I just pay attention to small shit like this. Maybe it's me reading too much into it, but I kind of give Oda his flowers, because as I've been reading One Piece, there just been moments after moments after moments, small things like this where I just look at it and I go, this guy's a fucking madman. And speaking of madman, back down in the underworld, we see as Loki is talking to somebody on the transponder still, and Loki's already kind of plotting here. And what I like there is that Oda's just laying more and the more groundwork. We know that something is coming here, and that's where we shift over, and you have everybody that is celebrating, but as all the celebrations are going on, it looks like there's some flames. Maybe some people have been summoning that giant pentagram or whatever symbol that is. One of them looks like a female. The other one is Shanks. And so I'm like, why is Shanks here? Does this have something to do with Loki? Like, this is good. This is good. Like, this was a damn good chapter. This was a damn good chapter. I cannot stress that enough. This was a lot of information, but very much earned. But that's going to be it for this blind reaction. If you like what I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.